So, welcome to Big Small Conversations. You and I talk a lot about business models all the time. So, I thought this would be such an opportune moment to bring it into the Big Small Conversations because we cannot ignore what is happening. We are all feeling the real impacts of slowing an economy down as COVID-19 has forced the whole world to do. But it's a brilliant time to discuss changes. And as someone like you, who is known to most as a serial entrepreneur, and I know that you lecture master students on innovation and business models, I really wanted to pick your brain about, what happens in a time of crisis, but more importantly, what opportunities are born in crisis. And that's what I want you and I to talk about today. Are you here for that?
First of all, thank you for having me. There is a saying that goes something like this, that a good crisis should never be wasted. So I believe there's opportunities that are going to be born out of this. I believe some businesses will get an opportunity to scale out of this, existing businesses. But of course, on the other side of things, some businesses will close because of COVID-19, as we have seen. So it presents opportunities for a myriad of businesses and different opportunities, because even the guys that are going to close, they get an opportunity to restart, right, and to rethink, which is awesome. It will also change business models. The truth of the matter is that life as we know it will never be the same. So we will never have schooling the way that we used to have schooling. We will never have work the way that we used to have work. So it presents a very exciting opportunity for the guys who are willing to embrace the change, but a very scary situation for people who are afraid of change.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that we can't ignore that a lot of people are almost frozen still because there's so much uncertainty. And that's what I'm hoping our conversation will do, is at the very least, calm people down and show them that on the other side of a crisis or the unknowing, that there are different ways to think about the situation as it stands. So yeah, should we do that?
It's actually quite interesting because, maybe the kind of stuff I may want to talk to you about today are opportunities that exist in perhaps financial services going forward, and perhaps e-commerce, right, going forward. We may touch on tourism perhaps at some point, but I think we start with those two.
Okay, perfect. So, and you would know a lot, obviously, about banking and financial services. You have a long-standing career in that sector, and you are a tech entrepreneur who's founded two incredible businesses within the financial services sector as well. What do you see, though, as the disruption in that sector as we sit here today?
Well, I think more often than not, we tend to think that banking and financial services is about the four walls that we go to, and I think going forward, we now know that we actually don't need the physical buildings, which are branches, to go to. It's quite interesting that if you look at business models, there's always been business models that and concepts around decentralization and centralization, right? And there are, at some point, things were central, functions were central, and so forth. At some point, some clever person said, no, let's decentralize, take the services closer to the people, to the customer, so that we give the customer a better experience. That has since changed, We're now in an era where things are going to converge again and come back to being centralized and controlled centrally. So centralizing simply means that the corporate functions will move back to like head office, if I may put it that way. And you'll have credit sitting at head office as we see in most banks. But most importantly, the person who's impacted by all these changes is the customer. And the customer is going to be forced to migrate to a mobile platform where they're able to interact with the bank. That's the only way they will be able to interact with banks and with their money. So mobile then becomes a critical function, and something that, because most banks are going to go mobile first. So we're starting to see that trend across the world, even before COVID. But I think COVID is going to fast track and accelerate that trend of people needing to now do stuff away from where they used to be.
But isn't that kind of problematic in a South African context, though? I mean, we accept that most people have phones, but are they the kind of phones that are geared for this level of digitization?
A very interesting thing, right? So at a glance, you would think that people do not have the type of phones that we are hoping they are carrying. At a glance, we think that our customers are carrying feature phones. But in truth, most of our customers, even the guys who are considered to be on the lower LSMs, do carry smartphones. They may not be fully functional in terms of all the features that you'll find on an iPhone 11 or on a Samsung S20, but they are functional for a banking type of situation because all of them have internet capability.
So what is the real opportunity then? I mean, do we see our big banks in a South African context quickly doing the migration, or post the crisis, we go back to business as usual because we are usually slower to adapt as consumers, that is?
One would hope that this will make the banks and the financial services companies, including insurance. I mean, because insurers are also very stubborn, right? They stick to what they know. They are very stubborn in terms of change and migrating to mobile platforms and migrating to electronic platforms. So we are hoping that because of whatever is going on, they will at least accelerate to a point. I don't think they'll be as quick as we hope they would be because obviously it requires a lot of investment. And as you would know, banks run on legacy systems that are very difficult to migrate from. And perhaps that's what has caused and helped Capitec to make the leap that they've made from a technological point of view to a bank that they are today. I mean, it's mobile first at Capitec. It is electronic first at Capitec, and versus the older banks, which are pretty much still struggling with the transformation, moving from their core banking systems from legacy to newer mobile capable and enabled platforms.
But doesn't this migration kind of threaten employment as we know it?
That's a sad reality. As we sit here today and having this conversation, I can almost guarantee you that a multitude of us employees out there are sitting there thinking they have jobs, but they actually don't. And they will find out the day that we open work again in business, the wheels of the economy start turning.
And we find that we don't have work specifically because COVID allows us to see how we can operate with minimum staff. Is that why?
Well, it's a combination of things. One, just the pure economic impact of COVID has caused some businesses to collapse and to close. The second thing is businesses have learned that some of the roles that they've always had, that they thought were useful, that they thought were critical, are actually not critical. So we've learned all these things, and any smart businessman and entrepreneur is currently reviewing their functions, reviewing what is going on in their business, reviewing their areas of efficiencies, efficacies, and so forth. So at some point, by the time that we open, everybody has had an opportunity to actually sit back and take time to relook at their business and say, how do I make the most out of what I have? And remember, capital pools are limited, and they are going to continue to be limited. And with everything that is going on, with the credit rating and so forth, credit is going to become more expensive. So we've got to be more efficient. So roles that are not important are going to be cut out. If I look at the impact of COVID on just property, on commercial property, it's going to be hectic because all of a sudden we've looked at the space that we have, and we are starting to say, but well, I can have 3/4 of my staff working from home, so I don't need this office. So the guy who owns that office, who I'm renting to, the landlord, is going to feel it because I'm going to renegotiate my contract now, and I'm going to walk away from that contract if I can. Right. So that the impact of COVID is mammoth, and it's going to have ripple effects across industries.
Yeah, and it's those ripple effects that I really want to hone in on. You spoke about business efficiencies, but even us as regular consumers sitting at home, we start realizing things we need and things we actually don't need. Previously or
Yeah.
pre-COVID, we were literally just consuming things because we are bombarded with information from brands that tell us what we need, and then we consume it because that's what we do. And in most cases, you have the disposable income. Now you're sitting at home and the money in your bank account is near worthless because you don't need to buy so many things. And I'm hoping that we go into post-COVID era being very aware of placing money where it is most needed. And that's where business opportunities are born, right?
That is true. I mean, if you think about it, we are closed into our homes. We don't go to the shops as often as we used to.
No.
We've started to understand our homes better, understand what is core to our living better. There are things that we would buy just because. Now, all of a sudden, we realize these things are not really required. We now realize that what we need most is internet more than some of the food items that we have in our shelves, right? So
remember on Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, it's become a primary need.
Why
right?
it becomes primary, yeah.
So all of a sudden, you start to see that internet businesses are going to thrive, right? So they are going to thrive. And that means that any business that is on the internet, any e-commerce business is likely to thrive going forward. Food deliveries are going to thrive going forward. And I think even retailers are going to be forced to change their models from being these big stores into being big warehouses.
Yeah.
So right. And then build the downstream delivery capability to the customers so that customers are not impacted. But this is good stuff that COVID brings, right? So this is good stuff that COVID brings. Alongside it, it calls for the general worker to now start thinking deeply about where they want to play in the economy going forward, because being a cashier is not going to be important anymore. So should I be on a scooter delivering pizzas or delivering food from Pick and Pays? Or what else do I do? Or do I become an internet entrepreneur myself and start selling stuff on the internet? So it is a great opportunity for the ones that are willing to embrace it.
This is actually the time where whatever it is you wanted to bring to the world, whatever you wanted to produce, I think now the world is ready, right? Because we are all reevaluating what it is we actually need. Maybe you're sitting with an idea right now that previously the barriers to entry in most businesses was so high, but now the consumer is literally connected to you via the internet, and all you have to do is find a way to get your product to that consumer. Otherwise, it's an open playing field.
Exactly. So we're going to see more and more, in my view, marketplace type businesses blossom and grow and become great. When I say marketplace, I'm talking about businesses such as Airbnb would be a marketplace for hotel rooms, right? Marketplace businesses where people are able to come in and sell stuff. Those businesses are going to thrive. And then it has a very nice impact at the bottom for the guy that's willing to work hard, because then they become the link between the marketplace, the supplier, and the consumer. That's the beauty of this thing. So any internet-enabled businesses are going to really become great.
And I think what makes a business critical is the purpose, right? Suddenly, the why in your business is going to be ever more important. In talking to entrepreneurs all the time, we always ask, what problem is your business solving? Unless it's a real pain area, it's very difficult to justify the business model. So when we speak about purpose, it's understanding, why do you exist? Otherwise, people won't latch themselves to something that is meaningless or just a nice to have or superfluous. So you really have to think deeply about the why, the purpose for your existence. You alluded to education earlier. Some of us, or some of you, I know you do, pay exorbitant fees for private schooling. And now the entire system has been migrated to a digital platform. And suddenly you're the teacher already that, that kind of has us thinking, why are we paying these high school fees again?
Exactly. And it's actually quite interesting because, I mean, it must have been last week when that debit order went through my account
And
and
cried.
I almost had a stroke. So the point is that is also another industry that is going to be disrupted, that is going to change, right? So education is never going to be the same again. Homeschooling is probably going to grow, supported by some platforms that have content, right? And the quicker that governments start to rethink the syllabus and how promotion happens,
Yeah.
the better. We've got to rethink
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
We've got to rethink transport. We've got to rethink retail, rethink banking, rethink pretty much everything around us.
Yeah.
But the impact that this is going to have, because I think less and less people are going to start traveling post-COVID. To work and back,
Oh,
to
to work
work and back.
right.
Yeah, right. So even oil companies needs to start thinking about this again and saying, but my literage is
Pumping as
likely to
much
stop,
fuel, yeah.
right? Yeah. So how am I going to make sure that I keep my revenues up and even better going forward? So we all have to go through this process of rethinking where we are.
Just a quick list. Where would you say the biggest opportunities will come from? Which sectors?
I think e-commerce,
Right.
technology, as in development of obviously, right? Developers are going to be required. I think from a skills point of view and so forth, right? So if you're a developer and you're able to put stuff together, you're going to be a winner because everyone is going to want to build internet businesses going forward. I think education presents a very interesting opportunity. I think another industry that could be very, very interesting, I call innovation an industry, right? Because there are people like me who live there. And it's our industry. We're innovating all sorts of things. But I think a community if you live in the community of innovators, you're going to thrive and you're going to build interesting things going forward, right? Internet of Things, of course, is going to grow, right? Because the more we are here at home, we want to be connected. We want to be connected to the home Wi-Fi. I want to be connected to the VPN at my office. I want to be connected. My things must be connected. So those industries, I think, are likely to grow.
Yeah, and for people that are not tech inclined, I mean, I'm one of those people. I have many great ideas, but I'm really not a dev person and I'm not technology inclined. Your advice would be?
Look, it's important to know the basics, right? So because it helps you to cut the bullshit from the real, right? Developers tend to be like any other contractor, any building contractor. They will stretch what it can. Yeah, they'll take the fat. So if you know what you're doing and if you understand the lingo, it helps, right? It takes away the pain. Stay in a circle of people of influence, people who are like-minded, people who are wanting to build Africa, who are interested in growing.
Basically, I am my own safe bet when those gates open. Bring something to the market, right? Whatever it is, it might be a key skill, it might be an idea, it might be a product, who knows? But the reality is, I can't wait for the gates to open and look at my employer and say, well, now I'm back.
You can imagine that in the crisis, people have found other ways of doing things. So all of a sudden, beer is being delivered via drones. So
and it's not in contravention with the rules.
It's not in contravention with the rules, right? He didn't go to the Berkeley store, but they got it done. So the point is, that business person who came up with that plan can now scale because he's used this period to test his model, right? So actually, I can be on the internet or on the phone, I can take orders, and I can dispatch via a drone, and it will deliver, and it will fly back.
But isn't that the most fascinating thing? That's a brilliant example that booze won. So a regulation comes into play. You may not trade in alcohol during this period, but the market still wants alcohol, right? So
Yeah,
somewhere in between, we need to get the product to the customer, and the regulations don't necessarily say you can't use a drone. But if we look at the value chain, isn't there an opportunity here suddenly to buy directly from the producer,
yeah,
which then has an
yeah.
impact of lowering the price for the consumer, but also it gives birth to, well, it doesn't give birth to, but it creates a rise in delivery services, like you said. So it
It
might
does. So,
create a
so
need for a bottle store per se. Maybe the producer can create, depots that the delivery service people can, collect from and distribute from. And maybe the bottle store is
yeah,
not the only place.
yeah. So these are the different opportunities that are going to be created by this period, right? Um, what I see, for example, is that look, we even the food manufacturers, right? Food manufacturers, or call it essentials manufacturers, they the traditional model has got them right at the as a primary source, right, with farmers and so forth, and then them, and then there's a wholesaler, and then there's a retailer, then there's a consumer at some point. But if you look at that model, it is ripe for disruption, right? Because with the growth of delivery services, right, whether it is by a drone or by scooter or by car, right, all of a sudden we don't really need checkers, do we? Do we really need SPAR? No, we don't, right? So we don't need SPAR, we don't need checkers, we don't need Pick and Pays. All of a sudden, what we need is Tiger Brands. The question is Tiger Brands and Premier Foods geared to deliver directly to us as consumers? And today, the truth of the matter is that they are not geared to, because one, they have handed that relationship over to these retailers who mark up those products, right, before they get to us. So they've got to be bold enough to start to change those models. But when they change those models, they're going to lose a lot of money initially, right? The truth of the matter is that there is demand, because we as consumers want those products. But they've got to be able to say, we're going to go direct.
And I think to stretch that thought even more, if we are in a scenario where we're using multiple modes of transportation to move food, like on the road, in the sky, and we've got all of those, then it kind of goes into the home as well. Because why do we keep fridges in the home?
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So
It also goes to the delivery man is going to get to my house and I won't be there. So I've got to be able to change my lock, allowing him to come into my house
or
and leave the food
of the house,
or have the fridge outside the house, or whatever it may be. But it just disrupts the entire value chain in a very interesting way. So we've got to start thinking about these things. And perhaps what would be really, really cool is if we could find a situation where a new manufacturer, think of what happened with banking, where a new player altogether came and disrupted the banking industry. Imagine if we had a new retailer who just decided, you know what, I'm not going to open a single shop. I'll have DCs, which are distribution centers, and I'm going to deliver from there. That's all I'm going to do. Pretty much what Take a Lot is doing and the guys. But the point is, that's the future of retail and of that industry.
Well, I think this is all very exciting.
Look, it is.
I think what we've done in this conversation, hopefully, is at least plant the seed so people can start thinking. And as the language that you and I use is always, how might we do something differently? We don't always have the answer, right? But at least we probe the questions. And I think the temptation is to always think about what can we do differently or better within the existing fold. And I'm saying, no, go out of the existing hold and think about what would matter most to the consumer, because that's ultimately who pays, right? Think about what matters
Exactly.
most to the individual and start with you. How would you like to consume certain things? How would you like to learn? How would you like to work? And if that is the starting point, that is the birth of great ideas. And I mean, we're making it sound very simplistic. It's a lot more complicated. It requires investment. It requires mindset shifts. We know all of that. But this is the time more than ever that we really do have to start thinking differently. So thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Ziggy.
Adios.